Hello and welcome back once again to movie reviews. And the water pump in my neighbor's apartment just started running, so hopefully that's not being picked up on the microphone because it's making a loud squealing sound over there. Anyway, welcome back to movie reviews. As I said, I saw three movies today. The third one on the list, again, a Christmas movie, so that's why I'm actually recording these uh, quite a few days ago, but I'm putting them out one by one because I want this one to fall a little bit closer to Christmas, which it is. Uh, and again, I apologize if there's problems with the audio. I've tried making some more adjustments to it. It sounds okay, but I'm still hearing like a lot of background, like in my headphones. So I don't know if that's actually being picked up on this audio at the moment or not. But hopefully not. Hopefully it's nice, clear audio, and if it is, I'll just keep recording like this, which again is still a little bit of a pain in the butt. But if it gets the videos up until I can fix the other problem, then yay. So anyway, today's movie was Krampus. Uh, so I was actually kind of looking forward to this one. I thought it might actually be fairly creepy and not just a bunch of jump scares. And for the most part, there weren't really any jump scares in this. There were times there could have been jump scares, and they probably would have earned it, but they didn't do it. They just kind of had something creepily like ease into the shot, so it wasn't really a jump scare as much as something just kind of lingering. um, so I appreciate that. That's how you build tension and then pay it off. Like, oh, why? Um, some of the things in this movie were a little bit creepy looking. If I ran into them just hanging out in an attic or something, I'd probably be like, "Oh, what the hell?" Um, until the end of the movie when they actually showed the Krampus. Like the whole movie, throughout the movie, they're showing the Krampus, but he's always in shadows in the distance. And then at the end, they actually show a nice close up of his face, and it's just, oh my god. Had you just kept it like shadowed and not showed us what he was supposed to look like, it probably would have been a lot more interesting. Because once it got there, it just kind of looked like this cheap prosthetic mask. Like the mouth didn't move; it was always just kind of like, like at one point it stuck out his tongue, so I was like, and it's like, really? That's supposed to be scary? It was scarier when he was jumping around from rooftop to rooftop, and all you could see was his big ass horns. Um, Also, the overall model on this one for the Krampus, they could have done so much better. The, for those of you who don't know what the Krampus actually is, go look it up. Basically, the story that we know as Santa Claus, where he delivers presents and gives coal to bad children. Um, the thing was, he would reward. Santa Claus had a partner. The partner wasn't necessarily evil, but in a way he was. But what it was Santa Claus would Santa Claus or Saint Nicholas would go around and give presents and stuff to children who had been good all year, and then to the children who had been bad, he would leave a lump of coal. And the lump of coal wasn't to signify anything to the child, it was to signify to the Krampus, this is a child who's been bad. And then the Krampus would come, and anyone who had received the coal, he would take. There's differing stories about what would happen to the children he would take. Some say he would eat them, others say he enslaved them and they would become his twisted elves. Um, Mostly, I always heard that he ate them. So it was supposed to be like this Christmas boogeyman. It's like, if you're good all year, St. Nicholas will bring you presents, but if you're bad, the Krampus will come and eat you. So it was always like this little thing to keep uh, kids in line. And then the tradition of Krampus kind of died out in favor of St. Nicholas or Santa Claus. So then it was more like, well, if you're good this year, Santa will bring you presents. If you're bad, he's not going to bring you anything. Which is kind of the story our society knows now. Um, so Krampus kind of falls by the wayside. Like even before this movie came out, I was talking about the Krampus at work like a few years ago, and everyone's like, "What the hell is the Krampus?" And I was like, "You never heard of the Krampus?" And they're like, "No." And so I had to like tell them the story, and they're like, "That's not real." And I was like, "Yeah, it is. Look it up." So they like Googled it, and they're like, "Oh my god!" And then But like the depictions of the Krampus aren't this deformed old man like this movie showed. It's go look him up. You'll see some interesting pictures. And the way he was portrayed in this movie, I always thought was a little bit off, but it was kind of creepy when he was hanging out in the shadows. And then as it progressed, it just got more and more silly looking. So the story starts out with it's kind of a cross between Christmas Vacation and Home Alone. Uh, so at first I was kind of into it. It's this family, they're not the best family. They're a little dysfunctional, but they manage, And the mother puts all this effort into making the house look nice and doing all this baking and stuff. Well, actually, the grandmother did all the baking. The mother just bought cookies at the store. Um, but she liked to cook. The mother liked to cook fancy foods like creme brulee and things like that for dessert. Um, and so she goes through all this trouble to try and make her house look fancy and nice. And then she has her redneck cousins. Well, actually, the one's her sister and her redneck husband and kids, um, who come over for Christmas. And so there's kind of that Chevy Chase and Randy Quaid dynamic between the two dads, and then you have the main boy who's kind of like the Kevin McAllister from Home Alone, where he still believes in Santa, even though like he knows that everyone says Santa's not real, but he still believes in it anyway. And he's like writing a letter to Santa Claus where he just wants his family to go back to being happy again because like he knows his mom and his dad have been having issues because his dad takes long business trips for work. Um, his sister was having some issues. He has some issues, and he even mentions like and as far as like my aunt and uncle, I wish things weren't so hard for them, because he kind of feels that maybe they're redneckish because they don't have the same privilege that his family does as far as money wise. And he just kind of writes this letter, and one of his cousins, who the cousins are all kind of dicks, like the one boy cousin, he doesn't really talk, he just kind of stands there looking blankly, and like he's a total pig. He just like chugs an entire 2 liter of soda at the dinner table and then belches into the girl's face, and like she's ready to get up and walk away, and the mom's like, no, just sit down. um and then one of the girl cousins, who are both kind of like bull dykish, I guess, in their appearance and the way they act, and not to offend any um, lesbians or anybody out there, but that's clearly what they were trying to portray these girls as, even though they were sisters, and they were only like 12. So that's kind of the issue they have, and so they're kind of bitchy, and the one steals the boy's letter to Santa and reads it out loud at the dinner table. And at first, everyone's just kind of like, oh, well, just any one of the parents at any time comes like, hey, knock it off, give him back his letter, and left it at that. But they all just sit there and listen to what he wrote to Santa Claus, and they're all kind of like, oh yeah, well, it is an issue, and at least he's thinking of us. And then like it gets to the in-law, or the, yeah, I guess you can call them the in-laws, the cousins or whatever, the two parents, and he's like, I wish things weren't as hard on them, and they're kind of like, oh, that's kind of sweet that at least someone in this side of the family doesn't look down on us. So then the girl's kind of like reading the letter, and it gets to the part about her and her sister, and she stops reading out loud, and then it's just like, screw you, our dad doesn't wish we were boys. And then like they just start fighting over the table and everything. And so yeah, clearly they're trying to portray them as being like uber tomboyish to the point where they, like I said, but again, not to offend anybody, but that's clearly what they're going for, is that stereotype. Um, so then like he kind of gets mad and gets his letter back, and he runs off. He's like, I just wanted us to have a nice Christmas for once. And he goes up to his room, and his dad comes in to talk to him. And his dad kind of like explains, Christmas is kind of about putting up with people. Like Christmas is about being with family, and sometimes family is people you just don't have anything in common with, and you just have to use Christmas as a way to try and find things that you have in common. And the boy's like, do you really believe that, Dad? He goes, I have to, it's like, because if not, then this kind of doesn't matter. And he's like, so hey, it's still a few days till Christmas. You got time to get that letter in the mail. And the kid's like thinking about it at first, and he's just like, what, screw everybody. He like tears it up and throws it out the window. And because he had an ill wish, that's what caused the Krampus to come, which traditionally isn't what causes the Krampus to come. But in this movie, that's what caused it. So him throwing this letter out into the wind causes this big blizzard, which blacks out the whole neighborhood, and everyone's kind of gone except for this family and like one DHL delivery guy. Which, does DHL even still run? Um, so yeah, like this delivery guy shows up to the house, like, package for you, and then like later on they find him, uh, spoilers, dead in his car. So then, because of the blackout, they can't get a hold of anyone. There's no cell signal or anything. So the daughter's like, can I run down the street to my boyfriend's house and make sure they're okay? And at first the mother's like, no, I don't think you should do that. And she's like, come on, mom, it's like 4 blocks away. I'll be fine. So the dad's like, oh, just let her go. So she's out walking and she sees the abandoned DHL truck and the guy inside. He's just like, like frozen in one position. She's like, and starts freaking out, trying to run back home. And then she's like, that's when she first sees the Krampus like leaping from rooftop to rooftop, chasing her. So she's the first victim. I'm not gonna say what happened to her, but she's the first one. So she doesn't come back home in an hour like the parents said. So the mom wants to go out and look for her, and the dad and the uncle are like, "Oh, let us go," so because the uncle had a Hummer, so obviously he can make it through the snow. So he's like, "Yeah, let's go out and take a look for her, see if we can find her." So they go over to the boyfriend's house. There's no one there. The place is abandoned. So they're like, "Okay, well, let's get back to the house and check on everyone, and then we'll go out and look for her again." Because like it was getting really cold out, and the truck ended up, something happened to the truck to where they had to walk back. So they get back to the house, and the mother's like, "You didn't find her?" And he's like, "No, but we're gonna go back out again in a bit, and we'll keep looking for her till we find her." Well, that's when everything weird around the house starts happening. Um, so then they're like, "Well, let's just stay inside. Wait till the storm passes. I'm sure she's somewhere safe. She's a tough girl. She knows how to take care of herself. She knows to seek shelter in the storm." Uh, so they're like, we'll just wait out the storm and then we'll go look for her. We'll all go together as a family. So they're hanging out waiting for the storm to pass. And the grandma's like hanging around the fireplace talking about you have to keep the fire hot because, the Krampus comes down the chimney and if the fire is going, he can't come down. So then the fire goes out because they all fell asleep. And the one cousin boy, the one that drank the 2 liter and belched in the girl's face that doesn't talk, he goes over to look at something in the fireplace because he gets woken up, and the Krampus takes him. Everyone wakes up and sees him like being sucked up the chimney, and they try and grab him and pull him back down. And there's like a bit where they're like like everyone's like forming this human chain trying to hold on to him, and eventually he gets taken. So then they're like, "What the hell's going on? What was that?" And then the grandma finally starts speaking up, and she tells them the story of when she was a little girl and the Krampus came. And now the Krampus is back because they're all basically shit people. And the kid's like, "Well, Grandma, isn't there anything we can do to fix it?" And she says something in I'm not sure where she was from. I think she might have been Greek or something, but she says something in because she speaks through most of the movie in a foreign language. And all the other kids are like, "What did she say?" And the boy's like, "I'm not really sure. I didn't understand the words." And then this older aunt that came with the cousin, she's like, "She basically said we're fucked." And the grandma just kind of looks over like, "Yeah." And then they're like, "Well, how do you know that's what she said?" And she goes, "Believe me, I've been around this world long enough to know when death is coming at you with his pants down." So like, there's the older aunt lady who's kind of funny. She makes the movie a little bit interesting, but not in the way that I've seen her act in other movies, and she's done a lot better at keeping the comedy going than she did in this one, but that's not necessarily her fault. It's probably just the writing. They didn't know what to have her do. So they're probably just like, ad-lib something, and she's like, "Oh, how about this?" And they're like, "Okay, that works, go with it." Yeah, so basically they know what's happening, so then they start like boarding up the house and everything. And they're going to try to go back out, get back to the truck, and make their way to the emergency shelter to see if anyone's down there. But before they can leave the house, that's when everything goes under attack. Uh, they manage to fight most of it off, and then like it comes back in force, and slowly, one by one, all of them start to get taken by the Krampus. So eventually, it's down to where it's just the boy by himself, and as the grandma had said in her earlier tale, she was the one who was left behind because she had made the wish. So then the boy's the only one left behind because he's the one who made the wish this time. Spoilers, by the way. So he goes and confronts the Krampus, and he's like, I made a mistake. I didn't want this. I just want my family back. I know you can fix this. And, the Krampus is just like, at first he's looking at him kind of like he's not sure, like this is the first time anyone's asked him to go back on what he's doing. And it looks like he might be considering it. And then he just kind of like grabs the kid by his head and like throws him into this pit of fire. And then it kind of fades to black for a second. And you're like, okay, is this going to be the credit roll? No, it gives you an ending. Which had they ended it there, that probably would have been a better ending. Like, no, you're fucked. I was going to leave you alone, but you came in and confronted me, so you're going to hell too. Would have been the more artsy ending, but instead they have the kid falling in the pit. It goes to black, and then it cuts back into the scene with him falling out of bed, like he had just woken up. So then it's kind of like it's a Christmas miracle, or it's just a bad dream, like the Ebenezer Scrooge thing. Because at one point in the movie, they are actually watching Christmas Carol, so it kind of hints to that as well. So yeah, it's a combination of Christmas Vacation, Home Alone, and Christmas Carol. And so he runs downstairs. Everyone's there. Everyone's getting along. This family who didn't get along for the entire like 2 days that all this was going on is now they're getting along. They're all happy and everything. Like, oh hey, about time you got out of bed. We were waiting for you so we could open up presents. And so everyone's being happy and friendly with each other, which seems a little out of the ordinary, but then it's like, well, maybe he got his wish that he just wanted his family to go back to being how they used to be, where everyone was happy. So maybe the Krampus gave him his wish, and so then everyone's kind of like forgotten or nobody's talking about the night before, so it's kind of assumed that it's a dream. And then he gets this little box, he opens it up, and inside is a little Krampus bell. And as soon as he pulls it out and like sees it, everyone kind of like pauses and starts looking around at each other, and it has that moment like was that all a dream or did that actually happen? Because everyone's kind of like remembering the events of the last 2 days now. And then it just like pans back out of the house, and you never really get an answer, and that's kind of the end of the movie. Well, you do get an answer, but I'm not going to spoil it. But that's kind of the end of the movie. So what did I think of the movie beyond that? I think it started out with a lot of potential and then kind of fizzled out midway through. You never really knew who the main focus of the movie was supposed to be other than the boy. But like it would occasionally switch focuses to where we're going to focus on these guys now, and it's like, okay, so this is what the movie's going to, oh no, we're going to focus over here now, and it's like, make up your mind, the boy's supposed to be the main focus, follow him, yeah, you have to go off on these other tangents for a reason, but then you kind of start exploring that dynamic, and then as soon as we start getting used to that dynamic, you switch over to a completely different story, and it's, yeah, like I said, it started out with a lot of potential, and it seems like they kind of got stuck at one point and didn't know what to write, and it just kind of fizzled from there. Like I said, the Krampus started out looking kind of freaky, and then got kind of cartoony and generic at the end, where it kind of looked like old 80s style B movie type of effects, and it had a lot of potential, especially for a Krampus movie, but yeah. And apparently there's going to be more Krampus movies next year. There were a few that were put out like through Asylum and stuff that actually look better than what this is, and their Krampus actually looks better on the box cover than what this one ended up looking. I do find it funny though that for those of you who know that I follow Kevin Smith and the Smodcast and whatnot, he had talked a while back about he had been writing this Christmas movie about the Krampus called Comes the Krampus, and he ended up. It's supposed to be being put out, I think, in 2016 is when he's actually going to film and release it. But he'd been talking about it for probably a good 3-4 years now, since like 2012, I want to say. But he ended up changing the name of it at one point because he was like, well, no one's really familiar with the Krampus story, so no one's gonna want to go see it based just on the name. So he actually changed the name of it to something else. And like he's been talking about this thing since like 2012, and now all of a sudden here's a Krampus movie. There's another Krampus movie coming out, I think next year as well. Um, and then there's all these like independent Krampus movies that all popped up this year, and it's like, really, all you guys were out of ideas. Kevin Smith comes up with this idea for the Krampus, and now everyone's doing the Krampus. So now by the time his Krampus movie comes out, it's gonna be like, oh, Kevin Smith is just copying all the other Krampus movies that came out. No, he had this damn idea to do this movie first. Everyone else copied him. So, stick with it, Kev. I'll go see it. Yeah, so I don't even know why I brought that up. It was just a tangent I went on. But yeah, so as far as a star rating on this one, I wanted to like it. I liked it as it started. Then by the end, I was just kind of like, okay, let's just wrap it up. You've lost your intent here. I'm gonna give this one a. I don't want to go too low with it because, like I said, the first part of it was kind of enjoyable before it got all crazy. But so I don't want to drop it quite to a 2, but I honestly feel like 2.5 is rating it too high because that's still keeping it like middle of the road. But yeah, I'm gonna go with 2.5 on this one. Like I said, the first part was enjoyable. The lead up was enjoyable. It just seems like they lost track of what they wanted to do and didn't know where to take the story at one point. So otherwise, had it kept at the pace it was going, it probably would have been a middle of the road or a 3 or 3.5. But because it lost its momentum and fizzled out, I'm gonna give it a 2.5. It doesn't quite deserve to be dropped down to a 2. So yeah, I'm gonna stick with 2.5 on that one. Yeah, so that's Krampus. So that is it for this review. Again, remember to like, comment, rate, and subscribe. Share the video, and whatever else you feel like doing. Whatever. I don't care. It's your life. Do what you want with it. But yeah. So again, as always, thanks for watching, and until next time, we'll see you at the movies.